Oh, hi. I'm just
Hi.
going through my music. Hi, Asher. I'm going through my
Hi,
music
Cantor.
for high holidays right now. And, I grew up in an Ashkenazi household, and everything I do is sort of the typical music, Dayenu,
Right.
Echad Mi Yodeya, all those great tunes. And I've invited Asher Levy to sit with us today and tell us, sort of broaden our horizons about the music of the world. The Jewish world has different flavors of music. And
Absolutely.
so I thought maybe we should share some of those with you. So first of all, hi, I'm Cantor Phil Barron from Valley Beth Shalom. And so nice of you to tune in to our little program today. So Asher, tell us about the other kinds of music that are out there in the Jewish world, and in particular, what I've heard you refer to as pan-Sephardic music.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So when I'm speaking about pan-Sephardic Jews, I'm speaking about Jews who may not strictly be Sephardic in the sense of coming from the Spanish exiles, but these are communities that range from, the strictest Sephardic in the strictest, most literal sense, the communities, for instance, of Greece and Turkey that speak Ladino, or the Spanish and Portuguese communities of London, but it's also going to include communities like the Judeo-Arabic communities of the Middle East. So communities like the Iraqi Baghdadi Jews, who even ended up all the way in India and Singapore by the 18th and 19th century. Those are all communities that are tied to the Spanish Sephardic tradition through shared customs, shared traditions, a shared right in the sense of what Siddur text is being used. And as you can imagine, the music from all of those different communities varies widely. There are some similarities, but Indian Jewish music is going to be very different than London Portuguese Jewish music.
So interesting. So why is it that as a kid, all we heard was the Ashkenazi melodies, and we thought that's Jewish music?
Well, I mean, it's a number of reasons, I would say. The mainstream Jewish institutions that we all know, our beloved synagogues and whatnot, the Jewish Federation, organizations, have been mainly there to serve the needs of Ashkenazi Jews who were their primary constituents for a long, long time. With Sephardic Jews, like Greek and Turkish Jews and Syrian Jews, mostly forming their own communities and proliferating customs and music, etc., just amongst themselves. It's only been more recently where we've seen different Jewish communities join Ashkenazi Jewish communities. For instance, the Persian community. We're so blessed to have a wonderful community of Persian Jews with us at Valley Beth Shalom. But in the 1960s, that wasn't a demographic reality. And so things have changed. More Sephardic Jews have joined in with Ashkenazi communities, with conservative Jewish communities, Reform communities. And as a result, I think it's time for the community to start incorporating some of that beauty and richness.
Absolutely, absolutely. So obviously Asher, and let me tell you a bit about Asher. He has been our musician in residence at Valley Beth Shalom for almost 3 years now. Am I right, Asher?
Yeah. Wow, time flies.
And obviously, he knows a lot about the Jews of the Pan-Sephardic region beyond just the music. He knows a lot of the cultural traditions too. So let's start there today. I want to ask you about some of the just general cultural differences between a American Ashkenazi Seder and, let's say, what you do at your house.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the Seder amongst the Pan-Sephardic communities, ranging from, again, in the West, you have Spanish and Portuguese Jews who made it all the way to the Caribbean and to America by the 17th, 18th century. So those were the oldest Jewish communities here, in fact. So ranging from those to Iraqi Jews who were merchants in the 18th century and made their way to India in the Far East. There are going to be some things that are going to be similar, and there are going to be many things that are going to be different depending on the cultural circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
My point of reference are Syrian Jews from Aleppo. That's my family's tradition, but I also grew up surrounded by Turkish Jews from Istanbul, and I have some in my family as well, cousins, who are Ladino speaking and descend from the original Spanish exiles. So if you go to a Sephardic Seder, one of the first things you'll notice being different is the Seder plate itself. So
Okay,
the Seder
great. Let's
plate,
start there.
So here I have, let me know if you can see it, I have a diagram from a very old Haggadah that shows...
Yeah, hold it a little bit closer, Asher. There you go. Yeah, and a little bit to your right. There you go. Yeah.
Okay, so here we have a diagram of from a very old Haggadah from Syria, and it speaks of the Seder HaKe'ara Lefi Minhag HaArizal. So in Syria and in many of the other places in the Middle East and also throughout North Africa and the various Sephardic communities, the influence of the Kabbalah was strong. And this actually became a very divisive point, with some communities fighting over how much Kabbalistic influence to incorporate. But at least...
Without getting too deep into it, is this what Isaac Luria's tradition would have been?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So we're speaking of the acceptance of Isaac Luria's tradition, the Ari HaKadosh, in different communities, and also the rejection of his teachings in certain communities. But the way I grew up was that we arranged the Seder plate and many of the aspects of the Seder according to the Lurianic Kabbalah.
Terrific.
So you have 3 matzot, and the matzot are on the Seder plate. They're at the top of the Seder plate, and they have a lot of significance. They symbolize the tribes, Kohen, Levy, and Israel, and then they also symbolize the Avot, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. So the 3 matzot have different aspects to them, different qualities that are symbolized. And then as you go,
And do you still break the middle one?
Yes, we absolutely break the
break
middle one.
Isaac.
But
Ouch.
the Akedah. There you go. And we'll cut it, and I'll explain in a moment how we cut it in a special way that also has Kabbalistic significance. But as you're going around the Seder plate, we have the Zroa, the bone, which is standard in most Jewish communities, except Syrian Jews make a point to eat lamb on Pesach at the Seder, which I understand is something that many Jewish communities make a point not to do.
Interesting. Okay.
And
the lamb representing the lamb's blood that was used to ward off the Malcha Mavis and so on.
Right. And the Korban Pesach is the most, it's one of the 3 major symbols of the Seder. So when you have a roast lamb, some communities said, okay, we're going to specifically Davka do this, Zecher LeKorban. And other communities said, specifically Davka, we're not going to eat lamb, because then we'd be confusing this lamb on our table with the real Korban Pesach, which is only going to come in the times of Geula. So that's a split between Syrian Jews and Ashkenazi Jews on the lamb. We use for maror romaine lettuce. And
we sometimes do that.
Right. And for the chazeret, which we don't eat, it's just a second type of maror on the plate, we use endive.
What's that?
It's a type of lettuce, another type of bitter lettuce.
Oh, like anise?
It's similar, but endive or endive. It's like a small...
endive, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
What about charoset? One thing that has sort of invaded the Ashkenazi Seder is the wonderful, mushy kind of charoset.
Exactly. So the charoset is supposed to be symbolic of the mortar. We all know it symbolizes the mortar between the bricks that the Jews built in captivity. So the traditional charoset that you have in all of the Middle Eastern and North African Jewish communities, even in Mediterranean Jewish communities like Greece and Italy, etc., is based on dried fruit, a paste of dried fruit. So in Iraq, it would be silan, which is date syrup. By the way, in the Torah where it says Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, the dvash is not honey, it's date syrup. So that's what the Iraqi Jews use. And in my family, we cook down a lot of dates, huge amounts of dates, and make a thick paste from them with nuts and spices. I know in certain Persian communities have a charoset that has many, many, many ingredients, tons of spices, tons of dried fruit, and I've seen people shape it into a pyramid on the table.
Beautiful, beautiful. So in general...
Oh, and one more thing, the karpas. The karpas, we use celery, including the head and the root.
And you get the leaves also, yeah?
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's part of what we do.
So in general, because Seder means order, in general, is the order the same?
Yes, the text, first of all, the text of the Haggadah, you're talking 90-something% the same in all Jewish communities anywhere in the world. Because it's very old, and you start hearing about these customs in the Talmud. So, there's a lot of established customs here. But the way we start, you mentioned the order. The way we start the Seder in all of our pan-Sephardic traditions is by singing the order of the Seder. So I'd like to sing a little bit of the Turkish Sephardic melody, the order of the Seder.
Before you do that, though, I want you to hold up that instrument and
Yes,
explain
yes.
what it is.
So this is an oud, and this particular one comes from Turkey, but the instrument itself is an ancient instrument that originally developed really in the area where Abraham came from, in the Fertile Crescent, in that cradle of civilization. And so this instrument then spread especially with the Islamic conquest of North Africa, into North Africa and throughout the Middle East and Mediterranean, making its way eventually to Spain. And at that point, the oud becomes the ancestor of the lute. Even the word oud has the same etymological roots as the word lute, meaning wood.
And like leud is lute.
Precisely.
Right,
Precisely.
yes.
That's exactly what it is. And then for all the instruments that we have, guitars, mandolins, things like that, they develop from this transmission of Eastern into Europe.
So hold that up for a second, because I want people to see the difference between the guitar, which developed later, probably in Spain, am I right? And the oud. There are a lot of similarities, but the oud has double strings also.
Yes, but there's also a similarity here to the guitar in that you have 6 courses. So you have, like a guitar has 6 strings, the oud has 11 strings. It's 5 doubled and 1 single.
I see. Great. Okay.
And also note those frets. This oud has none.
So like a violinist, you have to know where to put your fingers.
Precisely.
Yes.
Precisely.
Okay, great. Okay, Asher. So this is then the order of the Seder.
Yes.
And from more or less an Iraqi tradition, am I right?
This is from a Turkish tradition.
This is Turkish.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, but the oud itself is from an Iraqi.
Yes, but the oud traveled from that place many thousands of years ago, and so it's already attested in Syria and Egypt, a very long time ago.
Great. Okay, so the Turkish interpretation of the order of the Seder.
Order of the Seder. Jurhas, Garbas Yahas, Bagid Rosa, Motsim Masa, Maror Koref, Shulhan Oref, Safu Baref, El Mirza. And so that's how the order of the Seder would be sung in the Turkish tradition.
Beautiful. Now it's more or less a major scale, is it not?
Yes, but it is. It's ajam, which is what we call in the makam system, in our modal system in Arabic and Turkish music. Ajam is major. But the way that the Syrian Jews sing the order of the Seder, basically the same, but not major, or at least the tonic, the root note is shifted, so it becomes Kadesh Urhas Karpas Yahats on the third. Magid Rachsa Otzi Matza Maror Koreh Shulchan Oreh. You can still think of it as major if you want, but it's just shifted.
And that melody actually is very similar to the Ashkenazi melody that
exactly
you hear the kids singing in the school.
Exactly, very similar. And there's a relationship I find with all of the melodies, because they're reflecting similar texts that have a certain way of scanning. So, and especially sister communities. So the melody in Syria is going to be more similar to the melody in Turkey than it is to the one in Morocco, for instance.
So before we leave the Seder, I want to ask you a couple more questions about that. What about the 4 questions, the afikomen, things that we've become accustomed to? Are they a little bit different in the Sephardic tradition?
So I think one thing that's very important to note is that in the Sephardic tradition, there in every Sephardic tradition pretty much, there is an aspect before we go into the Magid, before we start telling the story with Halachma and Manishtana, there's a little bit of a play, or a little bit of an action, of an acting out of the story of Pesach that happens in a lot of Sephardic communities.
Oh, fun.
So in the Syrian tradition, what we do is we take the middle matzah, yes, and we break it into two pieces. One looked like a daled, and then the other like a vav.
Oh, that takes some expertise to get it to break.
It does, and it's something that my Jiddo Allah Shalom, my grandfather, taught my dad to do. And so he takes the knife and fork at the seder, perforates the matzah, and breaks it along those lines. And it's considered a good segula, good auspicious piece of luck, spiritual luck, if you will, when the matzah is broken correctly.
And then what do you do with it?
Okay, so first of all, the Vav and the Daled, again, we're going back to the Lurianic Kabbalah here. So the idea is that you have the Vav, you have 6 and 4 together making 10, like the Sfirot. So the middle matzah represents the Sfirot, the Kabbalistic emanations of God, if you will. And Moroccan Jews interpret it differently, by the way. They see it as a Hey. We see it as a Vav and a Daled, but they see it as a Hey. Hey for the Shem Hashem, for the name of God.
So, all right, for those who might not be familiar with the Hebrew letters, could you kind of draw that out for us, the Dalet and the Vav?
Yeah, definitely. So let me see the best way for me to do this.
You can draw it in the air even if you want to.
Yeah, okay. So the way it would be done is you have a Dalet. It would look more, for those who are familiar with the letters, it's not going to be different from what a resh would basically look like. There's no little tail. So it's just one like that, and then the little piece that's left, the little line that's left, that's the Vav.
Aha! So it could look like a Hey very easily.
It very easily could look like a Hey. And so there's
of course the Hey is associated with God's name.
Exactly. And so at that point, you take the smaller piece and you return it between the two matzot, and then you take the bigger piece, you wrap it up, and that becomes the afikoman. And at that point, we don't hide it at that point. What we do is we take it, we wrap it up into a bundle, and we wave it over people's heads while saying the following: Mish'arotam serurot besimlotam al shichmam ubnei Yisrael asu kidbar Moshe, which means Mish'arotam, that which remained of their possessions, they tied them, serurot besimlotam al shichmam, they tied them up in bags on their shoulders, ubnei Yisrael asu kidbar Moshe, and the people of Israel did according to the word of Moshe. So as this is happening, there's then a little back and forth between the leader of the Seder and everyone else. So the leader asks, Min Jayeh, which in Arabic means, where are you coming from? And then the person who's having the matzah over their heads or over their shoulder says, Min Mitzrayim, from Egypt. The leader of the Seder then says, La wen raih, where are you going? And the person who's having the matzah over them says, Li Yerushalayim, or Li Yerushalayim be'ezrat ha'er. And this goes on every single person at the Seder. We sing the verse and we wave the matzah over their shoulder, over their head, and until every single person from oldest to youngest has this done, we don't continue with halachma.
That's fantastic on a couple of levels. First of all, it's very visual.
Definitely.
It gives everybody something to do, and it's so interesting. You're actually waving it over each person's head.
Exactly.
Correct?
Yes.
And so it satisfies what's incumbent upon us to feel as though we actually were leaving Egypt on this.
Exactly.
Amazing.
And it's important to note that also the matzah is put then on the shoulder, over the head, and then on the left shoulder, because we're literally trying to say this matzah symbolizes the oppression of slavery, the packs on the back. So that's part of it. That's part of it, is that this is halachma. This is a bread of affliction, you know.
Right, and we are sort of girding ourselves to leave at the same time.
Exactly.
Based on the words that you used. Yeah.
And so with the halachma, that would be chanted according to the way that the whole seder is chanted, which is a melody that's traditionally used for the studying of the Mishnah. So
just to clarify, halachma anya, the bread of affliction. It's a part of the Seder that we recite, and so here we are acting it out very literally.
Right. Yeah, so immediately after we've done that whole thing with the Misharotam, the acting out, we say halach ma'anya, we say it in the Aramaic, but then we also say it in the vernacular. So in a Syrian community, that would be in Arabic, in Judeo-Arabic, and in the Turkish and Greek communities, that would be in Judeo-Spanish or in Ladino.
Interesting. And of course, it was done in Aramaic originally because that was the lingua franca of the time.
Exactly. So it becomes sort of incumbent upon different Jewish communities to preserve that practice. I think it's very important for people to incorporate, if you're an native English speaker, have English in your seder, because that's the idea. That's why the rabbis had this in Aramaic. And that's why in Syrian and Iraqi communities, it was done in Arabic. And in Ladino communities, it was done in Spanish, because this isn't just supposed to be something we run through. This is supposed to be a deeply meaningful commemoration of our passage from slavery into freedom. And we have to know it and understand it.
So there is an authenticity actually in the American Seder of doing it in the American vernacular and having each person read some of it in English, as we often do.
Absolutely.
And that's actually quite legitimate.
Absolutely, because that would be the way that it would have been done in any community in languages. Yiddish Haggadot, for instance, in Ashkenazi communities that show that that's what people would have done then.
Wonderful. So Asher, I want to be sure that we get to some of the music.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Of course, the Seder is normally filled with lots and lots of music. So I thought, I have an idea. It would be fun to just, let me play the beginning of Echad Mi Yodea the way we do it. And then I want you to do a little bit of it the way you do it.
Yes, yes. Before we do that, I want to point out just two more things about the Seder that are very different.
Sure.
First one being the way we do the 10 plagues. Whereas, how do you do this, Cantor Baron, in your family? How do you do the 10 plagues?
Okay, well, we take a knife or a spoon or a finger. Okay, many different ways to do it, and scoop out a little bit of wine and put it on the plate.
Yes.
Right? With each plague.
Right, exactly.
Svardea, Kinim, like that.
Exactly.
So you don't do it that way.
No, we do it totally different. So starting at the passage that comes before the 10 plagues, that talks about the Eser Makot, the 10 plagues, that they were accompanied with Dam, Va'esh, V'timrot Ashan. At that point, a basin, some sort of vessel is brought out, and the leader of the Seder pours wine straight into this vessel at the mention of those initial plagues. And then when we go through all of the Eser Makot, all of the 10 plagues, the leader continues to pour out from the cup for each of the plagues. And then once we're done with that, there's a tradition to get it out of the house immediately. So you either throw it outside or you throw it down the drain and run some water, because these are the plagues. We're really acting out that these symbolize the plagues. So we want to get that negative energy out from our Seder before we can continue with Dayenu and Hallel. And while we're on the topic of wine, we don't have a Kos Eliyah. There's no cup of Elijah, and there's no opening the door for Elijah.
No kidding. Now, it just didn't develop in the Sephardic world, or was
it's an authentically, So
it was excluded for a reason?
Well, it's not attested to in the Gemara. It's not attested to in the Geonic literature. And I was looking to see what the origin of this is. And it's really an authentically Ashkenazi custom that starts to emerge in around the 15th century.
It's very interesting. No, I just assumed it was universal.
Yeah.
Asher, you said Dam Va'esh. So where does blood and fire, right?
Yes, so before the Eser Makot that we call them out, we say, Dam Va. There's this whole passage, Uve Moftim Ze Hadam, Kemoshe Ne'emar, and it goes through and breaks down all of the plagues, that the plagues would have been, each plague was symbolic of 10 more plagues, and each of those 10 plagues is symbolic of more plagues. So it's sort of Talmudic, exposition on it. So it says, Ube moftim ze hadam kemoshe ne'emar, ve'natati moftim b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, dam va'esh v'timrot ashan, and you pour for each of those. So it means with wonders. When we say that God brought us out of Egypt with wonders, what does it mean? It means that God showed us wonders b'shamayim, in the heavens, u'ba'aretz, and the earth. And what were they? They were dam, blood, esh, fire, timrot ashan, the pillars of smoke that accompanied us out of Egypt.
Beautiful. Very interesting. Well, because time is running a little short, I want to make
Yeah,
sure we get some music.
definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
So, what about my idea? You want to try
I
that?
love it. Let's do it. I love it. It's
I'll just do a
fantastic.
little bit of Echad Mi Odea, and then let's hear a completely different version that comes to us from where, Asher?
Syria.
Syria. Okay. Echad Mi Odea, Echad Ani Odea, Echad Eloheinu, 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 Shema Shamayim U'Haaretz. That's how we do that.
Beautiful. I love it. I'm going to do the same verse according to the Syrian tradition. So the first verse of Echad Mi Odea, and this is in Judeo-Arabic. من يعلم ومن يدري أن الرب المجاني الدور الواحد واحد يلف لنا الله لا إله إلا هو. So that's the same thing that you just sang, but in Arabic. And the wording is a little bit different. Instead of Echad Mi Odea, of one who knows one, it's Min Ya'lam wa Min Yadri. Who can know and who can understand?
That's a little
Allah Rabb al-Mujali, that God reigns, that God is that God is. Haddahu al-Wahid, Wahid like Echad. And then you have and it's Echad, Allahu la ilaha illahu, that there is, and that's become part of Islamic prayer. That's a declaration of God's oneness. That means there is no God other than God.
It couldn't be more different, actually.
It really couldn't. And as we go through the verses, I'm familiar in the Ashkenazi verse, it's Shnei Luchot Abrit, right?
Yeah.
Sephardic version, it's Itnen Musa wa Aaron. So it's Moshe and Aharon are two. So even the way it breaks down by what's symbolized is completely different.
So it's a Syrian Arabic tradition? I mean, language-wise?
Yes, this is Syrian Judeo-Arabic tradition.
Yeah, Judeo-Arabic. Okay, so Judeo-Arabic, meaning it's really kind of a fusion of the two languages, am I right?
Less so than Yiddish, especially. So for instance, Judeo-Arabic from Morocco is not intelligible to Jews from Iraq, whereas regular Moroccan Arabic is completely intelligible.
Fascinating. So give us something else, Asher, another piece.
Absolutely. How about a couple verses of Chad Gadya in two different traditions.
Great.
So I'll give you a little bit of Judeo-Arabic, a little bit of Assyrian. As we say, the words are very similar actually to the Aramaic, because Arabic and Aramaic are so related. So instead of Chad Gadya, you have Wahad Jidi.
And it means the same thing.
Yeah, exactly the same thing. Wahad Jidi. And then I'm also going to do a little bit in Ladino of Un Cabretico from the Turkish tradition. One little goat. Cabretico.
Okay, great. So they all mean one goat, but they're said in different ways.
Yeah. And then there's even in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, among the Bukharan Jews, there is Jean Buzgola, which doesn't mean one goat, it means sweet little goat. Nice. So I'll give you a little Wahad Jidi. Wahad Jidi, Wahad Jidi, Wahad Jidi, Wahad Jidi, إلا اشترى لأبي بالنصر الدين. Wahad Jidi, Wahad Jidi, وإجت القطة وأخلت الجدي. إلى اشترى لأبي بنصر الدين. واحد جدي واحد جدي. And you go through all of the verses until you get to God. وإجاء المقدس مبارك القدس baruch hu المقدس مبارك in Arabic. So it goes
and
through
the mode lends itself to Chad Gadya, Chad Gadya. It kind of fits together. Not that different.
If you put in the microtone. So the next thing that I have is Un Cavretico, which is the same thing. It's Chad Gadya, but in Ladino.
Beautiful.
So un cabretico que lo mercó mi padre por dos levanim. Y vino el gato y comió el cabretico que lo mercó mi padre por dos levanim. And we'll go through all the verses until you get to God, Santo Bendito El.
That's beautiful. So instead of two zuzim, it's dos, and I didn't quite understand. Levadim?
Levanim.
Levanim. Oh, Levanim. I see. Huh.
Different increment.
Yeah, and that one musically, obviously, is very different.
Very, very different.
Yeah.
Very different.
Fantastic.
So that's how we would be singing the Seder songs in different traditions. And we also have, versions of Kilo Na'eh, for instance.
Oh, Kilo Na'eh. Oh, yeah.
The
I
Syrian
know that.
tradition is to sing it according to the melody that we sing for Adon HaSlichot, for high holidays. So we sing it, Kilo Na'eh, Kilo Ya'eh, Adir B'melucha, B'chor Kahalacha, Ketuda B'yomeru lo, Lecha, Lecha, Kilecha, Lecha, 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 Adonai Hamamdacha, Kilo Na'eh, Kilo Ya'eh. And of course, the Persian Jews have a different tradition for how to sing this. Adir B'melucha, B'chor Kahalacha, Ketuda B'yomeru lo, Lecha Lecha, Lecha Kilecha, Lecha Lecha, Lecha Adonai Hamamdacha, Kilo Na'eh, Kilo Ya'eh, Kilo Na'eh, Kilo Ya'eh. So that's a little bit of a Persian tradition for that.
I was dying to clap along, but I know we'd be a little out of sync.
A little out of sync, but yes.
The way the technology works.
6/8 Persian rhythm.
So finally, what do you do for Dayenu?
So there are a couple different traditions of how we would do it. We go through all of the words. That's also something I think important to note, is that we say every word of the Haggadah out loud, but it doesn't take a long time.
Really?
No, because we sing it. The whole thing is done sung. So there's no piece of the Haggadah that isn't a song. So when it's like that, when there's a chant for everything, it moves.
So so the music keeps changing as well throughout, even
To
for the bigger pieces of text.
Yeah. So for instance, there's a chant that I mentioned. It's the chant that we use for the Mishnah. So that would be for most things. So like Halach ma'an yadi achalu abhatana be'arad Misraim kol dichpin yete ve'echol kol disrich yete ve'esach, and that sort of chant goes through the whole Haggadah, basically. Same thing for the four questions. etc., etc.
Okay. And we used the Ashkenazi melody for the four questions when I was a kid. It's the
same idea. So that is the Ashkenazi melody for the chanting of Talmud, whereas we use the Sephardic melody for the chanting of Talmud.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Asher, this has been really wonderful. I wonder, could you do a little of Dayenu, the Sephardic way, to sort of end our
I will say
discussion?
That it's not the singing highlight of the Seder.
Oh, it isn't. All right, so end it the way you like.
So what I'll do is I'll give you a little taste of how we do Dayenu, and then I'll go into a little bit of what I think of as the singing highlight of the Seder, which is the Hallel. I know a lot of Ashkenazim skip through the Hallel or go very quickly, but for Sephardim, we have a great Hallel. We even do Nishmat Kol Chai. We do a lot of other things as part of our Hallel. So I'll give a little bit of Dayenu, and then I'll take us out with a little bit of Min HaMetzar Karatiya, according to the Syrian tradition.
Great. So Asher, Levy, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun to talk about this music.
It's
And
been a joy.
I hope those of you who are listening and watching have learned a little something about the music of the Sephardic region, and an understanding that Jewish music knows no borders,
Exactly.
and that we tend to absorb music from whatever culture we're living in. And of course, we have an American vernacular that we've developed now as well. But hopefully you've learned a little bit about the Sephardic tradition. Take it away, Asher.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Cantor Baron, for facilitating this.
My pleasure.
Here's a little dayenu from the Turkish tradition, and then I'm going to go into a Syrian version of Mina Misar Karatiya. كما مع رطوبات لمكم عليه إلو الصيانو من مصرايم بلو السبايم شفتيم دايرو إلو السبايم شفتيم بلو السبيلو هم دايرو إلو السبيلو هم بلو هراق بخورهم دايدو كما مع الرطوبات لمقهم علينا. So we'd go through all the verses like that, and then everyone would sing the Dayenu. The leader would sing, and everyone goes, Dayenu. Exactly. Now a little Mina Mesar from the Syrian tradition, a really, really joyous piece. من هم صار قارتيا عناني باهر حبيا أدنيلي لو إرامي عصيري من هم صار قارتيا عناني باهر حبيا أدنيلي لو إرامي عصيري Madim l'simcha, everyone. A good, healthy, happy holiday of Pesach. Chag Sameach.
Thank you for joining us. And a reminder that for Mimuna, which is coming up in about 10, 11, 12 days, something like that.
End of Pesach. Yes.
After Pesach, at the end, we'll be doing another one of these discussions. So hope you
I look
can
forward
to
to
that.
it.
Thanks very much, everyone.